Most people are asleep at night. The world is quiet. The streets are empty. The lights are off. But some people are awake. Nurses walking empty hospital corridors. Security guards checking dark warehouses. Cleaners moving through office buildings that should be empty, but sometimes are not. Night shift workers see things the rest of us never will. Most of them never reported. Not because it did not happen, because they know nobody would believe them. The 5 people in tonight's stories all worked the night shift when something happened that they have never been able to explain. These incidents were submitted directly to Cold Midnights. Names and locations have been changed to protect those who trusted me with these stories. This is what they saw when the rest of the world was sleeping.
It was just past 3 a.m. The ward was quiet. I was doing my rounds, checking on patients, making notes. The usual routine I had done hundreds of times. I came around the corner at the end of the corridor and saw her. An elderly woman in a hospital gown, standing outside room 12, facing the wall, completely still. My first thought was that a patient had got out of bed and was confused. It happens, especially at night. I walked toward her, calling out softly so I would not startle her. She did not respond. I reached her and put my hand on her shoulder to gently guide her back to bed. My hand went through her, not around her, not past her, through her, like putting your hand through cold smoke. I stepped back, falling to the ground, with all fears in me. She did not move, did not turn, did not acknowledge me in any way. I stood up, ran, quickly, back to the nurse's station. I told my colleague what I had seen. She looked at me for a moment, and then she pulled up the room allocation on the computer. Room 12 had been empty for 3 days. She was quiet for a moment. Then she said, "What did she look like?"
I described her. My colleague closed the computer. She said, "The last patient in room 12 died 3 days ago. She had a fall during the night and was found in the corridor outside the door. She said she was facing the wall when they found her." I did not go back down that corridor for the rest of the shift. I told the ward sister the following morning. She listened and nodded and said she is not the first person who has seen her down there. She said she seems to be confused, still looking for her room. She said it the way you say something you have accepted a long time ago, like it was just one more thing about that ward that you learned to live with. I requested a different ward the following week. I have never worked night shifts in a hospital since. Some things you see on a night shift, you cannot unsee. That corridor is one of them. I am a prison officer. I worked night shifts at the same prison for 14 years. I was alone in a wing that had been decommissioned 6 months earlier. The old wing had been closed due to structural issues. Nobody had been housed there for 6 months. I had to do a security check of the wing as part of a routine inspection before renovation work. I went in alone at 2 a.m. with a torch and a radio. The wing was exactly what you would expect. Empty cells, locked doors, complete silence. The particular atmosphere of a space that used to be full of people and is not anymore. I was halfway down the wing when I heard a cell door not opening. The sound of someone gripping the bars from inside and shaking them. The sound every officer knows. I stopped. The sound was coming from cell 9. I walked to cell 9 and pointed my torch through the bars. Empty.
But the bars were still moving, still vibrating, as if someone had just let go of them. I radioed in. My colleague asked me what I needed. I asked him to check the history of cell 9 on the old wing. He came back to me 3 minutes later. He was quiet for a moment before he spoke. He said, Cell 9 was the last occupied cell before the wing was decommissioned. He said, the occupant died in that cell 7 months ago. He said, he used to shake the bars at night. He said, it was how he got attention when he was in distress. He said, are you all right? I said, yes. I finished the inspection. I wrote in my report that the wing was structurally sound and ready for renovation. I did not write about cell 9. I did not write about the bars. Because some things do not belong in a report. Some things belong only in the dark where they happened. Where they are still happening. Every single night. In a cell that should be empty. On a wing that should be silent. At 2 a.m. when the rest of the world is sleeping.
We had a power cut at 3:17 a.m. Not unusual. The machines tripped the circuit occasionally. I went to the breaker room to reset it. The factory floor was completely dark and completely silent. Except it was not completely silent. I could hear the machines running. Not all of them. One specific machine. Line 4. Running at full speed in the complete darkness. Line 4 required power to operate. There was no power. I stood in the dark and listened to it running. Then I heard something else. Above the sound of the machine. Singing. A woman's voice. Soft. Coming from somewhere on the factory floor. Not frightened singing. Not random. A song. Deliberate and clear. And completely out of place in a dark factory at 3 a.m. The power came back on 40 seconds later. The factory floor was empty. Line 4 was still. I told my supervisor.
He asked me which machine I had heard. I said, line 4. He looked at me for a long time. Then he said, A woman died on line 4. Before my time. Before your time. He said, she used to sing while she worked. He said, you are not the first person to hear it. He said, we never put anyone on line 4 for the night shift anymore. He said, just in case it upsets her. I finished that shift and handed in my notice the following morning. 8 years I worked there. 8 years. I never heard anything I could not explain. One night in November ended all of that. I still hear that song sometimes. In the quiet. At 3 a.m. When the world is still. I do not think I will ever stop. I was the night security guard at a large distribution warehouse. At 2:30 a.m., I was doing my second round of the warehouse. Sector C is the furthest point from the control room. Long rows of shelving, 20 feet high. Single strip lighting. Always the coldest part of the building. I turned into aisle 14 and stopped. A man was standing at the far end of the aisle. Workers' clothing. High visibility vest. Facing away from me. The warehouse was empty. Nobody should have been there. The doors were all secured. The cameras had shown nothing. I called out, told him to stop and identify himself. He did not move. I walked toward him. He began to walk away. Slowly. At a pace that meant I was gaining on him, but slowly. He reached the end of the aisle and turned right. I ran to the end of the aisle and turned right. The aisle was empty. 40 feet of straight aisle, with nowhere to go except a solid shelving unit at the end. Empty. I reviewed every camera in the building. Nothing had entered. Nothing had moved. No camera had captured anyone in Sector C. Except mine. My body camera had been running the entire time. I reviewed the footage. The footage showed me walking down the aisle. It showed me stopping. It showed me calling out. It showed me walking toward the end of the aisle and turning right. It did not show the man in the high visibility vest. The aisle was empty on the footage the entire time. I watched the footage 3 times. On the third viewing, I noticed something I had missed before. In the footage, in the empty aisle, my breath was visible in the cold air. At the point where the man had been standing, there was a second cloud of breath in the footage. Not mine. In the wrong position. At the wrong height. As if something was standing there breathing. Something the camera could not see. I handed my notice in the following morning. 6 years of night shifts, and I had never been afraid of that warehouse. I have not been back since that night. I do not intend to.
The 8th floor was a law firm. Always immaculate. Always empty by the time I got there at midnight. I came out of the lift and immediately felt something was different. The lights were on. Not the full lights. Just the lights above one row of desks at the far end of the floor. A single pool of light in the otherwise dark office. And someone was sitting at a desk in that pool of light.
A man. Suit. Sitting with his back to me. Leaning over the desk. I assumed someone had stayed late and fallen asleep at their desk. It happened occasionally. I would always let them know I was cleaning, and they would usually pack up and leave. I called out as I walked toward him. He did not respond. I got close enough to see what he was doing. He was writing, leaning over a legal pad, writing quickly. The scratch of pen on paper was the only sound in the entire floor. I said, "Excuse me," very loudly. He stopped writing. He turned his head slowly to the left. Not toward me, just to the left. I could see his profile. His eyes were closed. I stepped back. He turned back to the pad and began writing again. I went back to the lift and called the building supervisor. He came up within 2 minutes. We walked back to the desk together. The lights above the desk were off. The desk was empty. The legal pad was there. My supervisor picked it up. It was covered in writing. Page after page of dense, tight handwriting. All in the same hand. All written that night, because the pad had been blank when I cleaned the floor 2 days earlier. My supervisor read some of it. Then he put it down. He said, "We should leave this for the partners to deal with in the morning." I asked him what it said. He would not tell me. I found out 3 weeks later from another cleaner who had heard it from the receptionist. She said the writing was case notes, legal case notes, in the handwriting of a senior partner who had died at his desk on the 8th floor 11 years earlier. She said the notes were for a case that had been unsolved at the time of his death. She said the notes contained the solution. I have never gone back to that building. I do not want to know what else he is trying to finish.
5 workers, 5 night shifts, 5 things that were never put in any report. The night shift shows you what the world looks like when most people are not watching. And sometimes what the world looks like at night is something nobody was supposed to see. If something happened to you on a night shift that you have never been able to explain, send it to Cold Midnights. The link is in the description. You should probably subscribe, because the stories on this channel aren't just stories.